Ever wonder how we got to a world buzzing about Bitcoin?
It really is everywhere you turn these days, isn't it?
It is. And to think, it all started with this one white paper. Back in 2008, a mysterious figure, Satoshi Nakamoto, dropped this document that would ignite a revolution.
A revolution indeed. Talk about a seismic shift in how we think about money and finance.
It really is. And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive, to unpack this Bitcoin origin story. We're going straight to the source, Nakamoto's white paper, to understand the genesis of this digital currency.
Yeah, it's not every day you get to dissect a document that's basically the founding text of an entirely new financial system.
Absolutely. And the best part is, you don't need to be a tech whiz to grasp the core concepts here.
You definitely don't. Nakamoto does a brilliant job of laying it all out in a clear, concise way.
So where does he start? What's the problem he's trying to solve with this whole Bitcoin thing?
Right off the bat, he kind of shines a light on the limitations of our traditional online payment systems. The way we're all used to doing business online.
Yeah, I mean, we rely on banks or credit card companies every time we shop or send money online.
Exactly. They act as these middlemen, verifying our transactions and, in theory, keeping our money safe.
We place a lot of trust in these institutions. I mean, I know I do.
We do, and according to Nakamoto, that right there is a fundamental vulnerability.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. A lot of eggs in one basket.
Exactly. He recognized that centralizing power in this way, having these single points of failure, it creates inherent risks. Risks of fraud, censorship, even the potential collapse of these institutions themselves.
Yeah, no system is foolproof, that's for sure. We've certainly seen our share of financial scandals over the years. So what does Nakamoto propose? What's the alternative?
He throws out this radical idea. What if we eliminate the middleman entirely?
Whoa, you're saying no more banks.
That's the gist of it. Imagine a system where online payments happen directly between individuals without the need for a bank or any central authority to oversee the process.
Okay, I have to admit, that's a pretty bold vision. A world without banks is certainly something to think about. But how do you even begin to build a system like that?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, right? That's where things get really interesting. Nakamoto proposes something he calls a purely peer-to-peer electronic cash system.
Purely peer-to-peer. So it's just like me sending money directly to you, no one in between.
Exactly. No banks, no intermediaries, just pure direct transactions. And the real stroke of genius lies in how he addressed the fundamental challenges inherent in such a system.
And what are those?
Well, for one, how do you ensure that someone doesn't spend the same Bitcoin twice?
Ah, I see. In the real world, we have tangible currency, dollar bills, coins. But with digital currency, how do you prevent someone from just making copies of their Bitcoins and spending them over and over again?
Exactly. And this is where we get to the crux of Nakamoto's genius. He recognized that preventing this double spending dilemma was absolutely essential if you wanted to create a viable digital cash system.
So how does she solve it?
He came up with an ingenious solution involving something called a decentralized timestamp server.
A decentralized timestamp server. Okay, now we're getting into the technical weeds a bit. What does that even mean?
I know, it sounds a bit intimidating, right? But it's actually a really elegant solution when you break it down. Picture a digital ledger, a record of every single Bitcoin transaction that's ever been made.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
Now imagine that this ledger isn't controlled by any single entity, like a bank. Instead, it's distributed across a vast network of computers all over the world.
So it's like a shared record that everyone on the network has access to.
Exactly. And that, in essence, is the beauty of decentralization. No single point of failure, no one entity has control over the entire system.
So if someone wants to tamper with the system, they can't just hack into one central server. They'd have to hack into every computer on the network.
Precisely. It becomes practically impossible to manipulate.
Okay, it's starting to see how this all fits together now. Okay, so we've got this digital ledger, this timestamp server spread out across the network. But how do you make sure it stays accurate? I mean, anyone can join the network, right?
Right, and that's where Nakamoto introduces this really elegant mechanism, proof of work. It's genius, really.
Proof of work. Okay, I've heard that term before.
Yeah.
Honestly, it still sounds kind of like, I don't know, like a gym membership or something.
A gym membership, huh? Well, it's a workout for your computer, that's for sure.
So how does it actually work?
Okay, so imagine like a giant Sudoku puzzle.
Okay.
But instead of numbers, you're dealing with these really complex cryptographic problems.
Oh boy.
Right. And these puzzles, they're incredibly difficult to solve. Like, it takes a massive amount of computational power to even have a shot at finding the right answer.
So you need some serious computer horsepower to crack this code.
You got it. And in the Bitcoin network, the people with those powerful computers, we call them miners.
Miners, okay?
They're racing against each other to be the first to solve these proof-of-work puzzles. And the winner, well, they get to add the next block of transactions to that digital ledger, to the blockchain.
So it's kind of like a digital gold rush, in a way. Everyone's vying for their chance to unearth some digital treasure.
That's a great analogy. It's this really ingenious incentive system built right into the heart of the network.
Okay, what's stopping someone from, manipulating the blockchain?
Right.
What if they have the fastest computers? Can't they just rig the system in their favor?
That's the beauty of it. Every time a new block is added to the chain, it's cryptographically linked to the block that came before it. So to alter a transaction, even just one, a rogue miner would have to redo the proof of work for that block and every single block that came after it.
It's basically like trying to rewrite history, right?
Yeah.
Every single line.
Exactly. The sheer amount of computational effort required to pull that off, it's astronomical. It's just not worth it, even if you had all the computing power in the world.
So the system is designed to make it virtually tamper-proof.
You got it. And that's the beauty of this whole decentralized cryptographic system. But let's say I want to buy you that cup of coffee with Bitcoin.
The $1 million cup of coffee.
Right. How do you know that those Bitcoins I'm sending you haven't already been spent somewhere else? How do we verify that in this system without a bank or some central authority to double check?
Right. Yeah, I was wondering about that. It can't just be the honor system, right?
Nope, definitely not. And this is where another brilliant piece of the puzzle comes in. Something called a Merkle tree.
A Merkle tree. Okay, now you're just messing with me.
I know. It sounds like something out of Tolkien, right? But trust me on this one. Imagine you've got this huge library full of books, right?
Okay.
And you need to verify that a single sentence, just one tiny detail, is actually in one of those books.
Right, I'd have to go through every single book, page by page.
That's the old-fashioned way. A Merkle tree, on the other hand, it's like having a librarian who can instantly confirm that the detail you're looking for is there without having to read every single page of every single book.
Okay, so it's like a shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
But how does that apply to Bitcoin?
Well, in Bitcoin, these Merkle trees allow for something called simplified payment verification.
So even though the technology is super complex, using it is actually pretty straightforward.
Exactly. You don't need to understand all the technical ins and outs to trust that the system is verifying transactions for you in a secure and efficient way.
Simplified payment verification.
Yeah.
Okay, I can get on board with that. But all this talk of digital ledgers and cryptography, it makes me wonder about privacy. In a world obsessed with data, where does Bitcoin stand on all that?
That's a great question and a really important one. Because when people hear digital currency, privacy is often one of the first things that comes to mind.
Right, exactly. So is it traceable? Can anyone see what I'm doing with my Bitcoin?
Okay, so it's not perfectly anonymous, but Bitcoin does offer a significant degree of privacy.
Okay, tell me more.
Think about it this way. Bitcoin transactions, they're linked to public keys.
Public keys?
Right, but not real-world identities. It's like, imagine using a loyalty card at the grocery store versus paying with cash.
Right.
The store, they can track your purchases. If you use that loyalty card, they've got all your info. But if you pay with cash, total anonymity. Right.
Makes sense.
So with Bitcoin, you can see that a transaction occurred, you can see the funds moving on the blockchain, but you don't automatically know who's on the other end of that transaction.
Interesting.
It's kind of like looking at stock market data. You know, you can see the trades happening, but you don't know the identities of the people behind those trades. Plus, Bitcoin users can take additional steps to enhance their privacy even further, making it even harder to trace transactions back to a specific individual.
So there are ways to cover your tracks even more if you're really concerned about privacy. Fascinating. This has been such an insightful look at the origins of Bitcoin, and it all stems back to this one white paper. This one document that really did spark a revolution. It's got me thinking, what would Satoshi Nakamoto think about all this today,
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's really interesting, because the white paper itself, it doesn't really delve into predictions about the future.
He doesn't lay out a roadmap for this new world he envisioned.
Not really. It's more like a blueprint, a technical explanation of how to build the system. But the broader social, political, even philosophical implications of a decentralized system like this, that's left for us to ponder.
It's true. He kind of just throws it out into the world and lets it take on a life of its own.
Right. I mean, it's a really elegant solution to a complex technical problem, but it's also this incredibly thought-provoking concept that challenges our assumptions about, well, everything, really. Money, power, trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This idea of a decentralized future, it's exciting, sure, but it's also a little bit daunting. We're so used to relying on central authorities, intermediaries to keep things running smoothly,
Uh,
to provide a sense of trust and security. But this feels different. It feels like we're at the very beginning of something huge, a fundamental shift in how we think about, well, about everything.
It does, doesn't it? It's like this digital renaissance, this move towards decentralization. It really makes you wonder. Will digital currencies like Bitcoin become the norm? Are we headed for a future where traditional financial systems become obsolete? These are questions we're all going to be grappling with in the years to come.
What a thought. We've gone from unpacking a single white paper to contemplating the future of finance and, well, maybe even society as we know it. It's been a wild ride.
I know, right?
And to our listeners, we want to keep this conversation going. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin and this whole idea of a decentralized future? Hit us up on social media, leave a comment on our website, let us know what you think, and join us next time for another deep dive as we continue to explore the ideas shaping our world.